밥 두 끼. 토끼들은 눈 감아 rest in peace. Now working hard to make my 밥 두 끼. 토끼들은 눈 감아 rest in peace.
병신아 지금 내가 하는 말들은 넌 절대 이해할 수 없어. 병신아 돈이 없다면 넌 절대로 우리와 함께 할 수 없어. 병신아
It was one of those rare, serene nights when the stars seemed to align themselves in perfect harmony with the universe. The air was crisp and cold, carrying with it a hint of saltiness from the nearby ocean. I found myself wandering aimlessly along the deserted pier, lost in my thoughts, trying to escape from the haunting memories of my marriage to an old man. Little did I know that fate had other plans for me. As I rounded a corner, I stumbled upon a shadowy figure leaning against a post, gazing out at the endless expanse of the ocean. There was something about the way he held himself, the air of command that surrounded him, that sent a shiver down my spine. He was handsome. I couldn't help but feel drawn to him, even though I knew deep down that this was someone I shouldn't be associating with. "Can I help you with something?" he asked softly, his voice like velvet on my. I forced myself to meet his piercing gaze, feeling the weight of his stare. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude, I stammered. I don't know, I guess I was just looking for a way out. He smiled then, a wolfish grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "Well, you found it," he said, stepping forward. I took an step back, my heart pounding in my chest. He chuckled softly. "I'm not here to hurt you, you know. I can see that you're in pain, and I can help you find your way out of this mess." His words were like a balm to my soul, and I found myself trusting him, despite all the warnings in my head. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" He stepped closer till his. "I'm Park Jimin. They call me Boss, and I can make all your problems go away." His words sent a shiver down my spine, both from fear and anticipation. I knew that this man was no ordinary person, but somehow his presence made me feel safe. "How can you do that?" I asked, feeling foolish for even entertaining the idea. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me closer. "I have my ways," he murmured into my ear. "But I need you to trust me, to let me help you." Sent a wave of coursing through my, and for a moment I forgot about everything else. I don't know," I stammered. "I've never known anyone like you before." He smiled, his gaze never leaving mine. "That's because you've never met anyone like me before?" His words were, with confidence, and for a fleeting moment I believed him. Look, he continued, I can give you a new life, a new identity. But first, you need to make a decision. Do you want to be free of all this? Or do you want to go back to what you knew before? I thought of the life I had been into, the endless days and nights with a man who cared nothing for me. I thought of the freedom I had once known, the joy of simply being myself. And then I thought of this man standing before me, offering me a way out. I want to be free, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I want to be me again. He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. Then come with me, he said, taking my hand in his. Let's start a new life together. And with that, Jimin led me away from the pier into the darkness of the night. I knew that I was taking a huge, trusting this man who belonged to a world I knew nothing about. But somehow, I couldn't help but feel that with him by my side, I would finally find the freedom I had been searching for. As we made our way through the city, I couldn't help but notice the way people would bow their heads or look away when they saw Jimin approaching. It was clear that he had a great deal of power and that anyone connected to him was untouchable. I shuddered to think of the life I had left behind, of the life I could have had if I had never married that old man. But I tried not to dwell on it, instead focusing on the future that Jimin had promised me. We eventually arrived at a secluded mansion on the outskirts of town, surrounded by lush gardens and a high, impenetrable wall. Jimin led me inside, through a series of dimly lit corridors and opulent rooms. As we walked, he explained that this was his home, his sanctuary from the world outside. I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and fear as I took it all in. Eventually, we reached a small, cozy sitting room where a fire crackled in the hearth. Jimin gestured for me to sit down, and then he took a seat across from me. So, he said, leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees. What is it that you want to do with your life? I hesitated for a moment, still struggling to believe that this was all real. I don't know, I admitted. I've never really had a choice before. He smiled then, a kind and understanding smile. That's going to change now, he said gently. You can be whoever you want to be. Do whatever you want to do. The world is your oyster, my dear. The only limit is your own imagination. I felt a lump forming in my throat as his words sank in. Maybe, just maybe, he was right. Maybe I really could start over, find happiness again. As we talked, I couldn't help but notice the way the firelight flickered against his, casting his features into a warm golden glow. There was something about him, something that drew me in and made me feel safe. It was as if I had known him for years, as if we had shared a lifetime of secrets and memories. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't want to leave his side. "Don't worry," he said, reading my thoughts once again. "We'll find a way to make this work, I promise. You're not alone anymore, you know." And with that, he reached out and took my hand in his. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. Days turned into weeks, and as I grew more comfortable in my new surroundings, I began to explore my options. Jimin introduced me to a world of possibilities, from art and music to languages and history. He saw to it that I had the best teachers and mentors, ensuring that I could pursue whatever passion I chose. And as I immersed myself in these new experiences, I found myself falling more and more in love with the man who had rescued me from my former life. One evening, as we sat by the fire, I mustered the courage to tell him how I felt. I don't know how to thank you," I stammered, looking up at him. "For everything you've done, for giving me this chance at a new life." He smiled down at me, his eyes twinkling. "You don't need to thank me," he said softly. "I did it because I wanted to. Because I wanted you by my side." His words sent a shiver through my, and as he leaned in closer, I could feel the warmth of, "I want you to know that I care for you, Ryan. Very much." As he spoke, his hand reached up to cradle my cheek, his thumb tracing circles against. I couldn't help but close my eyes, savoring the "I care for you too," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the crackling fire. "More than I ever thought possible." He leaned in closer still, until just inches apart. I could feel the anticipation building between us, like a tangible thing we could and hold. And then he closed the distance. This was real, I thought. This was us. And as we, beneath the flickering light of the fire, I knew that I had finally found my home. Later that night. "What do you want to do with your life, Ryan?" he asked softly. Truly. I smiled up at him, feeling safe and loved in a way I never had before. "I want to spend it with you," I said simply. "I want to explore the world with you, to see all the things you've seen and experience all the things you've experienced. I want to be by your side always." He smiled back, his eyes filled with tenderness and pride. "Then that's what we'll do," he said, pressing to my forehead. "Together." And as I nestled closer to him, I knew that with Jimin by my side, there was nothing I couldn't accomplish, nothing I couldn't have. For the first time in my life, I truly felt free. We spent the next several years exploring the world together, learning from each other and from the people we met along the way. Jimin's influence opened doors for me that would have otherwise remained closed, and I made it my mission to make the most of every opportunity. I studied languages, immersing myself in the rhythms and cadences of different tongues. I delved into history, fascinated by the stories of those who had come before us and the impact they had made on the world. And as I grew more confident in myself and my abilities, I began to share my knowledge with others, teaching and inspiring in turn. After 5 years, we settled into a comfortable routine, balancing our adventures with the quiet pleasures of home. We had our own little haven, nestled in the hills, overlooking the sea. It was a place where we could retreat from the world and be together, just the two of us. There were days when we would lounge by the pool, sipping drinks and enjoying the sunshine, and others when we would curl up by the fire, lost in conversations or in the pages of a good book. And as the years went by, we began to dream of something more, something permanent and lasting. One evening, as we sat together in our favorite spot, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I mustered the courage to broach the subject that had been on my mind for some time. "Jimin," I began, my voice barely more than a whisper. I think I'd like to have a baby." His face clouded over for a moment, and I could see the conflicting emotions playing across his features. But then his expression softened, and he took my hand in his. "I've been thinking about that too," he admitted. "And you know that? I'd like that very much." His words sent a rush of joy through my heart, and I leaned in to press on his cheek. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "Thank you for giving me this life, for giving us this chance." He brushed the tears away with his thumb, his gentle and reassuring. "It's not just me, Ryan. It's us, together. We've made this life, and together we'll make it even more beautiful." His voice was filled with emotion, and I felt a shiver run through me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world around us into shadow, Jimin rose to his feet, offering me his hand. With a swift motion, he swept me into his arms and carried me over to the soft, lush blankets pulling around our feet. The fire crackled behind us, casting flickering light across his face as he looked down at me, his eyes burning with "Make me the happiest man alive, Ryan," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "To love, to cherish, and to carry on our legacy." His words were like a brand, igniting a passion within me that I hadn't known existed. Then let me show you how much I love you. Together in a rhythm of love, I felt a connection to him that was deeper than anything I'd ever known. It was as if our souls were intertwined, dancing together in a waltz that would last forever. I knew that with Jimin by my side, there was nothing we couldn't accomplish, nothing we couldn't have. Our love was the flame that would guide us through life, burning bright and true. And as I felt the first stirrings of new life within me, I knew that our journey together was only just beginning. But as long as we had each other, as long as we had this love, we could face whatever challenges came our way, and we would always find our way back to each other, no matter where the road might lead.